live. Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Zach.
And this is F1 Fanatics. And we are back for another F1 Fantasy Weekly. It is that time of the week. You know, Wednesdays is your day of the week where you get to get up to date with all your latest fantasy knowledge or news that you could wish to hope for in our long and winding ramblings. And today's show, we are going to be doing a mid-season review with obviously a nod towards fantasy. So it's going to be a very fantasy-focused mid-season review. So yeah, as usual, Zach joins me here on the F1 Fantasy Wiki podcast. As usual, Zach, if you are first-time listeners into the show, Zach, can you explain what F1 Fantasy actually is?
I can indeed. F1 Fantasy is a great little game that you can play. If you download the F1 app, it's absolutely free. There's a little side, I don't know what you call it, but there's a little side gadget where you can build your fantasy team and compete with your friends and family. You choose 5 drivers and 1 constructor with a 100 million budget, and yeah, choose your favourite drivers and who you think is going to do the best, and you get points for finishing high up in a race, of course, doing overtakes or finishing higher than where you started on qualifying, and for beating your teammate and little things like that. So great fun little game that you should all play.
And I think after last week, Zach, there is only one thing really to clear up after another fantastic sum up intro of things. Are we friends this week?
I think we are friends because I've tied it up 1-1 on our head-to-head.
Have you?
Yep, because I correctly called that there would be a move in the transfer market of the drivers. It is silly season, of course.
But does that count?
Absolutely counts. Absolutely. 1-1.
Well, I feel this is a change of the rules. It was like a head-to-head on F1 fantasy teams, and now we've just thrown in right predictions in any sort of thing.
Well, it's not any sort of thing, really. You seemed very, very confident last week that, no, it's not going to be. Gasly's safe, his seat's safe. Everyone said his seat's safe. Oh, yeah. And I said, I don't know about that. I don't think it is safe. I said, give it a week or two and we shall see. I expect to hear something. Lo and behold, we've heard something.
Yeah.
1 point for Zach.
Yeah, we have. Well, I think it's ridiculous. We should do something like, I'm going to predict that I'm going to brush my teeth on the morning of the next qualifying at Spa.
Well, okay, fine, do that, but maybe I'll have to hide your toothbrush.
Right.
Basically, yes, we're friends. Let's just leave that
there. Hooray! Friendship reborn.
Friendship.
Yeah. Woo. Woo, friend.
Fantasy friend.
Exactly. Right. So there is only really one place to start. We kind of touched on it there, and that is the big news this week that Marco has been up to his normal tricks, and he has axed a driver halfway through a season, and it is not Max Verstappen this time he is promoting for a seemingly underperforming driver in Pierre Gasly. Well, let's be honest, the decision to drop Pierre Gasly can't really be argued with. He was doing incredibly poorly in that seat. But what can be a surprise is that it was replaced by Alexander Albon. Zach, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, if we didn't have the news earlier, before that they were always considering Albon, it was very clear that Helmut Marko was stubborn on Kvyat, obviously axing him in the past. So so we got it clear that it was Albon versus Gasly competing for the seat. But really, Kvyat's outscored Albon. He obviously got the podium where Albon had the chance to get the podium, but slipped down a few places and finished sixth. So when you weigh up Albon versus Kvyat, it seems a bit surprising, really, that they've gone for Albon. But it is surely because they're looking to the future.
It is indeed, but I think for a driver who's had half a season in F1, it's a huge risk. It is an absolutely huge risk to be doing this. And I really hope that this move back to Toro Rosso works for Pierre Gasly, that he regains that kind of confidence and in his driving that he had in Toro Rosso last year and was put in strong and solid performances for the team. And for Alex Albon, obviously, I hope he doesn't turn out like Kvyat and now Gasly before him and struggle and get axed in that Red Bull seat. I hope he takes the plunge, as he said. I think his reply to it was, I realise I'm jumping in at the deep end here, but I've brought my swimming trunks. So that was a nice, light, refreshing twist on it, which almost is quite refreshing because it shows a bit of inner confidence that I wasn't necessarily sure was there. So he seems, obviously realizes what a big opportunity this is. He seems quite relaxed by the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's remarkably composed, considering, as you said, half a season, just 12 races under his belt. Yeah, Red Bull. Wow.
Yeah, big call. The only thing I can see is, well, obviously Kvyat and Gasly have all had an opportunity in the Red Bull seat, and they don't know what Alex Albon's doing, and they haven't confirmed him for 2020. So this is very much a trial 9 races. So if it doesn't work out, they are very much prepared not to give him the seat for next season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give you a question then. So let's say Albon struggles as much as Gasly has done, and scores. I suppose Gasly's had 12 races, whereas Albon will only have 9 races. But let's say Albon scores somewhere between 40 and 50 points, struggles just as much as Pierre did. What do you think Red Bull would do then?
If Daniel Kvyat has a strong second half as he did first half of the season, I believe he will be given another shot at the seat.
Wow.
As he is
Imagine that.
But he's probably been the most competent of the three, assuming that Albon has that Gasly-like form, because Kvyat actually was, the most competent out of the three, but getting demoted to the team for a driver called Max Verstappen, that decision hasn't exactly worked out badly for Red Bull, has it?
No, not at all. Yeah, I was just imagining if Kvyat got the seat alongside Max next season. That crazy. That really would be like Red Bull roulette, really, like just rotating each driver. Wow, I can't imagine it.
Christian Horner's comments is they have 4 amazing drivers under contract, and they can rotate them at any point.
Yeah.
And the only real reason I can see Kvyat staying is because obviously Toro Rosso are in that fantastic position of 5th in the Constructors' Championship, and with Renault looking pretty dire, if they are able to secure that 5th position, obviously prize money is paid out on position in the Constructors. That will be good for the Red Bull brand and investing in both cars, really. So if they leave the stronger driver out of the 2 and let Albon have his trial period in the Red Bull, that they can easily reverse, because let's be honest, I don't think he can do any worse than Pierre Gasly.
No, well, he can because Gasly, for the most part, kept the car on the track. I know there's a few races where he didn't, but there's a couple of them times it wasn't actually his fault. But so Albon, if I see Albon as a bit more of an aggressive driver, if he did try too many risky overtakes and did get too many DNFs, he could do worse. Hopefully not, but I don't think it's out of question.
No, no. Um, yeah, but I hope for both their sakes that it isn't worse. But yeah, let's bring this back to F1 fantasy. So obviously,
Yep.
for you smarter players out there, Alex Albon, I don't know if he has already gone up by if people have clocked onto this idea.
No,
Um,
he's not gone up yet. He's still 7.6
so
as we record this on Tuesday night.
yeah, so 7.6 million to me is an absolute steal because what is Pierre Gasly's current price?
14.2.
So if he does equal to what Gasly's doing, he's at least going to double in price. And that is
Yes, the price structure is a little bit of a strange one to wrap your head around in F1 fantasy. I believe it's mostly due to performance wise. So if Albon achieves, let's say, sixth, that's where you'd expect him to be at least. If he achieves a few sixth place finishes, then his price will go up definitely from 7.6. But it's also on ownership as well. So, and we have a lot of, by this stage, we have a lot of F1 fantasy players that are inactive. So just because it's a Red Bull driver at 7.6 doesn't mean his ownership's going to fly up, because it's only us active ones that are playing the game, loving the game, that are going to transfer him in. So it'll be interesting to see what his ownership percentage does. Currently, he's on 13.7% owned. See what happens to that.
I think it's a win-win because he's going to go up in price. You're going to make money of him. It's just how much money you're going to make on him. And if he does well, then obviously you've got a really dirt cheap driver who is going to score you big points, which then frees up funds elsewhere.
Absolutely.
To invest in your team. And maybe get a Verstappen Hamilton combo going.
That's a dream. That's a dream right there. So yeah, the only real negative to Albon in fantasy is the exact same problem that Gasly had, which was no matter how well you do, you're going to struggle to beat his teammate Verstappen. Verstappen just on fire this season, doing everything he can, getting everything he can out of that car. So that's the only trouble, is he's going to miss out on the points for beating teammate. But other than that, can't go wrong for 7.6 million.
No, you can't, can you? So that is our F1 fantasy recommendation. If you are listening to this and you are thinking about changing your team, we would reckon with your free transfer, remember you also do have that wild card. So with only 9 races to go, isn't it, Zach?
Yep.
Yeah, with only 9 races to go, it is bold to play your wild card this early, but it might be worth doing that opportunity if you don't want to just use up your free transfer on getting Albon in and freeing up those funds, like I said. Yeah. Any other more points on that, Zach?
I suppose if you're unsure, if you're like me and you're sitting pretty with your team and you like it a lot and you're just not sure what to do, how to bring Albon in, even at such a cheap price, if you're just so happy with your team but you don't want to change anything, but you have your wild card there, obviously, because we've all got a fresh wild card now, then you could wait till Spa, watch the race, enjoy the race, and if Albon does great, so if he achieves P6 or better, then you go, okay, he's settled in already. It's time to get him, because I'm tempted to be a bit patient and just wait for him to settle in, then jump on the train, on the Albon train. But if you want to, you can sit through Spa, and if he finishes P6 or better, then instantly hit that wild card before the price changes change, because they will change at some point after the race. Sometimes it's an hour after the race. Sometimes it's a few days after the race. So I recommend doing it straight after the race if he does well and you want to rechange your team to get him in.
Yeah,
so that's an option.
That is one thing with the F1 fantasy team. So sometimes the weekends are really good for updating points, and other times you're sitting there on Tuesday and going, do they even care?
Yeah, that's why you want to follow us on Twitter, and we'll be sure to tweet out the points as they roll in.
Exactly. So you can at least work out your points for your drivers for that weekend.
Right, last thing on this Gasly Albon switch, we should talk about Pierre Gasly from a fantasy perspective. Now he's in the Toro Rosso, will you ever transfer him in this season? What do you think?
I mean, unless his price drops drastically to a Lando Norris style level, it's a no from me, Zach.
Yeah, I can't help but agree with you, sadly. 14.2 is far too much for a Toro Rosso driver.
Yeah, exactly. So there needs to be a way of finding that round, because he doesn't have the consistency of like a Carlos Sainz or a Kimi Raikkonen, or even the potential to do well of a Danny Rick.
Yeah.
Those type of the drivers obviously experience off that thing. Not even Kvyat. What is Kvyat on?
What is Kvyat on total score? Yes, I can tell you Kvyat has scored 117 points so far this season. That's pretty decent. Fantasy.
And how much is he?
Kvyat is, I think, around the 7 or 8 mark. I will check that for you. Kvyat is 8.3 currently.
Ooh. So obviously, I think he would have gone up in recent weeks, because obviously, Kvyat started as the cheapest driver in the game at about 6.7, wasn't he?
Yeah, good memory.
So yeah, it was crazy. So yeah, if you're going to go for a Toro Rosso driver, definitely Daniel Kvyat, because we don't know how this move is going to affect Pierre Gasly mentally. He might go on a bit of a decline like poor Daniel Kvyat did when he first got dropped by Red Bull.
Yeah, exactly. And if it is the case, then it does make Kvyat a lot nicer of an option, because while it's been Kvyat and Albon, they've been pretty much for the most part keeping up to pace with each other, fantasy points wise at least. Albon scoring 89 points so far, so that's only 30 just under off Kvyat. So
obviously a big one of those would have been the podium for Kvyat.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that was a huge point scorer. So if you take that out, then there's not much
pretty
between
much neck and neck. Yeah.
Yeah. So if Gasly does have a bit of a meltdown, then yeah, Kvyat becomes a lot nicer of an option. But at the same time, watch out. Maybe Gasly's going to be motivated to perform better. Maybe he'll feel more comfortable in that Toro Rosso car.
Maybe he will.
One to watch.
Only time will tell.
Exactly.
But guys, now on to, obviously that was a little bit of a kind of reaction to the news and relating it back to F1 Fantasy, like we should do on an F1 Fantasy podcast. But we're now going to move on to our mid-season review, Zach. So where are we going to start off? So actually, I'll break it down. So what we're going to break it down for this next part is we're going to look at 10 drivers, and then we're going to split it with a quiz, then look at the final 10 drivers, and then move on to kind of finally rounding off the podcast. So do stick with us, guys. That is the that is the plan. That is the structure. And I hope you enjoy the conversation to come. So, Zach, over to you.
Okay, well, actually, I'm going to throw it straight back to you. Where would you like to start? Who would you like to start with? You give me a name, and I'll tell you some information.
Driver roulette. Oh, okay. I'm going to spin. I'm putting my chips down, and it is Sebastian Vettel, red.
Brilliant. Red pays out. Okay, so Sebastian Vettel is the 4th highest total point scorer in the game on fantasy so far, with 340 points, outscoring his teammate Charles Leclerc by a big 71 points, which might be surprising.
That
really.
is, but Leclerc has struggled, especially in the last 2 to 3 races. Well, obviously, he did well at Silverstone when Vettel rammed into the back of Verstappen, and Austria. So maybe just the last 2 races. But yeah, early season Vettel was fairly strong and had that Canada second place that maybe should have.
Yeah. Well, the difference probably is that Leclerc has had 2, maybe 3. I want to say 2 DNFs. Do you think he's had it?
Yeah,
Monaco.
That is the big thing, and Hungary. No,
and Germany.
Yeah.
Whereas Vettel hasn't had a single DNF. Even that incident with Verstappen at Silverstone, he at least continued and finished the race, albeit it was in 18th in the end after the penalty dropped him behind the Williams.
I believe
for a fantasy
15th.
Oh, 15th, sorry. But for a fantasy perspective, 15th much better than a DNF because you're not slapped with a -15. So that's why one of the reasons why Vettel has so many more points than Leclerc.
Brilliant. So yeah, fourth highest driver. So he's had a steady really start. I think if we kind of look at that, it's nothing incredible. He's obviously, you'd be hoping realistically, looking at those top 3 teams, that the drivers would be Hamilton, Verstappen and Vettel in whatever order it had been in the season. And then you had Bottas, Leclerc and Gasly/Albon as the driver below, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That would be the expected fantasy point. So it is maybe a little bit nice to see that Bottas is up there.
Yeah. The trouble is, for Vettel, 340 points, great. But the trouble is, his price tag is 30.1 million. Maybe that's because his popularity, his ownership, he's owned by 1 in every 4 fantasy players.
I mean, that is literally a Ferrari fan takeover, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That is blind adoration for Scuderia Ferrari, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's only 0.4 million cheaper than Lewis Hamilton, which it's not bang for your buck there. That's not value for money.
No. So a pretty standard start to the season for Vettel. We'll say there. Right, I suppose it's next driver, Zach. Who we got up second? I will throw this one over to you.
Oh, well, we'll follow on from Vettel with the only driver in the game that is more expensive than him, which is, of course, Lewis Hamilton. 489 points for Lewis. That is a 68-point difference to Verstappen, who is in second. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton. You pay the premium and you get the premium points.
Yeah, I mean, if there has been ever a time of the season that you have cashed in on Lewis, then this is the season. 8 wins from 12 of the races. Has he been on all but a couple of the podiums?
That's a great question.
I believe his only podiums he's missed out on is Austria and Hungary. Sorry, I keep on, every time I go to say Hockenheim, I always say Hungary. Hockenheim.
Yeah.
I mean,
so yeah, and even then he finished 5th and 8th, which is still in the top 10, which is perfect for streaks. He's so consistent. Great fantasy option.
Yeah, I suppose, like, you don't really need as cruel as is in terms of fantasy points. There isn't really much to review about Hamilton in terms of yeah, you said you pay the big money, you get the big results. He does what he says on the tins.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah, it hurts your team elsewhere because obviously you have less money to play with, but you get so many points more often than not. But it's worth it for you. It's hard to justify not having him in your team.
yeah, yeah, it really is. I mean, it hasn't necessarily worked out too well for me since I took him out. I don't know, around about. It didn't work out terribly because Leclerc had some strong performances in Austria and Silverstone, but obviously Hamilton had equally strong performances. So, oops.
I've only owned him once for 1 week in the fantasy game this season. That was Silverstone where he got the win. So I recuperated points from him there. Don't know why I got rid of him.
You're a moron. That's why. There's going to be people listening at home going, do these guys know what they're doing? Neither of them have Hamilton in their team currently, and one has only had them in 1 week of the season. Do they even play? I don't know, Zach. Do we even play?
I guess not.
No,
We try to,
no,
but
no. We try and we're triers, and everyone loves a trier, guys. Hey, we get the participation award. We're the ones who've come last in your school sports days, and the parents feel sorry for you, so they give you your nice little ribbon. And they say, "Oh," and you go, "What was that for?" And it's like going, "For being a good participant." Oh, thanks. Cheers.
yeah, we're the ones that came home with a certificate for 100% school attendance.
Yeah, that's what we are. We've had 100% weekly participation in F1 fantasy today.
Yeah.
Oh, oh no. Maybe it's worth something, mate. Maybe it's worth something.
Maybe. But yeah, maybe if Albon, if I do decide to be patient and don't transfer an Albon, going back to that, and he does have a great race at Spa, maybe I'll hit that wild card and find a way to get Hamilton, Verstappen, and Albon all in a team, and I'll live happily ever after.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, what a beautiful way to keep that balance, mate. Wonderful, wonderful. So I believe so. We've done Vettel, we've done Hamilton. The natural one to pick next there really is Verstappen, isn't he?
Yep. Let's go for Verstappen then. So Verstappen, as I touched on, 421 points. That is just 68 behind Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, and he is 3 million cheaper. He's always on the rise for Verstappen because he keeps putting in great performances. 3 million cheaper as it stands than Lewis Hamilton. And the great thing about Verstappen is he's consistently gonna beat his teammate. Unless Albon can do something crazy, you'd think that would continue on. Verstappen constantly gonna beat his teammate, qualifying and race, and continue to bring in the points. What do you reckon?
He is just to me, he just seems like a must-have because he's so much cheaper in that Red Bull car than both, obviously, Vettel and Hamilton, that he just frees up a lot of space. And so you can almost, by having Mercedes as your constructor, you can almost make up for the loss that you have for not having Hamilton in your team.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think he's a bit of a no-brainer for any team. If you can fit him and Hamilton in, great. But yeah, I've tended to think that Max Verstappen is the stronger bet.
Yeah, well, recent form, he has been beating Hamilton because Hamilton's been so consistent at the start of the year. He recuperated a lot more points than Verstappen, but recent form, Verstappen's catching him all the time. So yeah, Verstappen, absolutely great asset to have in your team.
And
Yep.
if you're going to get him, probably get him quick, because he's only going to get more and more popular. And like that said, in terms of how that fee is judged, he is, the more he's selected, and obviously his current race form, the more expensive he's going to get, guys, which then obviously limits your options. And the higher he gets, the more and more Hamilton looks the sensible choice.
Yeah, exactly. And again, what is the stat now? I think it's 21 races he's finished top 5 in. So again, that's so consistent, like consecutively consistent. So he's going to be racking up them streaks as well. You know how I love a streak.
Oh, you do love a streak, Zach. You do.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, shall we move on?
3. So, where do we want to go with this direction? Do we kind of almost want to leave this first stint as we go for the big teams? So, therefore, I suppose we still count Pierre Gasly at this point at Red Bull, Bottas, and Leclerc as the next 3, or do we want to go completely off random?
I don't mind. We can have. We've had some of the good. Shall we have some bad and ugly? It's up to you.
Oh, okay. Well, if we're going bad and ugly, I believe there is only one place that we can start, and that is Romain Grosjean.
Oh, Romain Grosjean. Do you remember how many points he's scored now? His total point score?
He just got into positive, didn't he?
No. You wish.
He's now -8.
Nearly -12.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not bad considering, is it?
You're mocking me for last week. Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It could be worse.
It's okay. It's awful. Let's not beat around the bush. If you fancy players have had Romain Grosjean in your team, what are you doing? Cue Mike having starting the season with Romain Grosjean in his car.
Oh, what was you thinking?
I had Romain Grosjean and Danny Rick, so that was a nice double DNF to start the season. I was like, what is this F1 fantasy? Why am I trying?
Wow.
But
look at you now. Look at you now. Look at how
Here I
far
am,
you've
6
come.
months down the line, and I feel like Pierre Gasly. I'm just waiting for Zach to give me the chop, guys. This could be my last F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast. Zach told me that I had the gig until the end of the season, but you just don't know in the world of F1 anymore, do you?
You never know when you're going to get replaced by a young rookie from Thailand.
Exactly. So look forward to our Thailand co-host next week. Is it Thailandese or Thailandese? I mean, let's be honest. He represents Thailand, but he's British, Albon, pretty much.
Yeah, British at heart. Yeah. He's one of our own.
Right, Romain Grosjean. If you've got him, he is terrible. His mid-season review for anything, any aspect of just normal F1, F1 fantasy, terrible. If you had him, shame on you. So shame on me. Shame on you and me. But shame on you. But I will share it with you.
Yes, except if you had him or Haas as a constructor at Spain. Because at Spain, they made the dream team, the F1 Fantasy Dream Team, which is the best possible team you could have had that week. Because Grosjean got 1 point and finished 10th.
Wasn't Spain the race where they were running 7th and 8th and they collided and Grosjean dropped back to 10th?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you remember Grosjean had to go around that bollard like three laps in a row because he kept having little incidents.
Yeah. No, that wasn't a favourite moment of Helmut Marko.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That probably sums up Grosjean quite nicely. That is number 4.
Who do you want next?
Oh, 4. So we're sticking with the uh, much to be desired. Shall we go for Lance Stroll?
Lance Stroll, much to be desired. Well, that's a little bit harsh. Lance Stroll, did you know, has scored 115 points so far
15.
this fantasy
That
season?
that is only 2 points
100.
behind Kvyat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Good memory.
Wow, that is well. He was obviously losing out on the qualifying bonus and challenge to his teammate quite badly. But in the race, it's a little bit more even. I believe in their head-to-head, it is 8-4 in favour of Perez.
Yeah, 84 is not great, but it's okay, I guess.
Better than his 12-0 qualifying, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is indeed. Yeah. Lance Stroll, what can you say? How's he got 115 points when he doesn't beat his teammate that much then? It's mainly because he keeps it on the track. Only one DNF this season.
Is it going to be a bit like Kvyat and the fourth place skews things a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. That fourth place was a big points haul for him. I believe that was 27 points he got in at Germany. So yeah, that is a large portion of his points. But yeah, 115 points for what you pay for. That's decent.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree with you.
And the reason why this sneaks under the radar is because he doesn't necessarily score the championship points because he's only made it out of Q1 one time this season, and that was for P15 anyway. So he's always starting P15 or lower on the grid, most of the time it's lower. But in the race, he normally gets up 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 places. So he gets there. He gets that 10 extra points or 8 or 6 points, depending on how many places he's overtaken. But yeah, so he ticks along nicely and gets them points, even though he only finishes 13th, 12th, 11th, whatever, doesn't necessarily score championship points. He gets
he's
a
getting
nice
big
amount of
fantasy,
fantasy points. Exactly, yeah.
and that is why F1 fantasy is such an unusual game and so unpredictable, because obviously the normal grid can be predictable at times, from who is scoring and through there, and obviously with the addition of the turbo driver and everything putting into position, it is just, yeah, it makes things really interesting in drivers. So a driver like Lance Stroll, who hasn't necessarily scored too many points, championship points, I think he would be on 6 without that 4th place finish. Yeah, obviously doing massively well in F1 fantasy.
Yeah,
So Lance
and
Stroll, a surprise good pick.
yeah, he's been in the dream team 3 times this season, Lance Stroll.
That's impressive.
Yeah, not bad.
Right, moving on, and if we are our third driver left to be desired, I think I might stick with his. Well, it's probably between Magnussen and Perez.
What's
What?
between Magnussen and Perez?
Actually, let's do both. Who
Okay.
do you want to go? Let's go back to Haas and let's go for Magnussen.
Magnussen, 81 points scored. Not quite got into the triple figures yet. Haas has had their fair share of troubles. But yeah, 81 points scored for Magnussen so far. What do you think about
It's not great, but then that pretty much sums up Haas's season. I mean, yeah, you probably look at someone like Lance Stroll, who scored 115, and he is much better value for money, so allows you to do a lot more with your team than obviously someone like a Magnussen does, although I believe Magnussen has dropped over time due to obviously Haas's poor performances throughout the season.
Yeah. Yeah, let's have a look at Magnussen's price. I was just looking at it. He's only been in the Dream Team once. That was the Canadian Grand Prix. Yeah, Magnussen will cost you 10.6. Oh, that's too much to pay, isn't it?
That is a big fantasy no-no.
Why has he got so much ownership? I reckon, you know what I reckon that is? I reckon that is the inactive teams again. When people were first creating their team, you chose Grosjean. I can see many people going for Magnussen as well.
Utahs would do well as they finished off the second half of the season with arguably the best car in the midfield.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it kind of skewed people, and yeah, lazy players who picked their team and just saw where it would go, have really struggled.
Yeah. And so to cap off Haas, I'll just say this. They have been the lowest scoring constructors. If you've ever had Haas as your constructor in F1 Fantasy, again, what are you doing? Stop listening to this and reevaluate your life. Then come back and listen to this and you'll be good. But yeah, Haas scored less points than even Williams this season. 122 points Haas has scored. Williams 150.
That's mad, absolutely mad. Just proves how good George Russell was early doors as a pick.
Yeah, you'd have never predicted that at the start of the season.
No, you wouldn't, would you? Right, moving on to Sport Pezza Racing Point again, and that is to Checo Perez, the little Mexican driver. How do we feel he has done? I feel well, from our quiz last week, I remember that he is actually behind Lance Stroll, but he is still in the hundreds. Am I correct?
Wrong. From the quiz last week, you're just not paying attention, would you? That's why you got 5 out of 12. No, from the quiz last week, he was behind George Russell. Russell scored 137. Perez,
but he's
126.
126, head of Lance Stroll.
Head of Lance Stroll. And cheaper than Lance Stroll. It comes in at 9.4 million.
Wow. I mean,
so, yeah.
That didn't used to be the case, but that's a pretty solid pick, and Checo is a very solid driver.
Yeah, you're right. That didn't used to be the case. Lance Stroll, I actually picked Lance Stroll up for about 7 million something. And then he had that amazing race in Germany where I had him in and scored his big 27 points for, and he shot up in price to 9.7 million, and it now costs more than Checo. And so yeah, cashed out on Lance Stroll, made easy money. But anyway, back to Perez, 126 points, 9.4 million. Definitely an option if you're playing your wild card and you fancy a Perez punt. Why not?
Yeah, and because obviously the Racing Point did bring big upgrades over 3 weekends going into the summer break, and obviously they would be assumingly working on that over as well. So yeah, it's there's certainly a car where Lawrence Stroll's money is certainly starting to have an effect on proceedings. So definitely a team to watch out in the second half of the season, I would say. Be interesting to see how both Checo and Lance drive.
Yeah, and he's got the form for it. Checo Perez just finished outside the points last race out at Hungary, but he definitely didn't miss out on any points from a fantasy perspective, scoring a nice 17 points, which is great for what you're paying for him. 17 points, lovely. Made the dream team last race out.
Wow, very good. And I think what we should do is we should put the Racing Point and the Haas in a Mercedes Ferrari Red Bull sandwich. And so our last 3 drivers for this period is we should look at Leclerc, Bottas, and Gasly. Let's start off with Leclerc.
Okay, Leclerc 269 points. Now, that's a little bit on the low side for a Ferrari driver. But what I do like about Charles is his price tag. He comes in I believe around 21.6. So yeah, he is he's 9 million cheaper than Hamilton and Vettel, and
He's
7
just
million cheaper than Verstappen.
he's just on those weekends where Ferrari have started to do a little bit better. He's just a really safe, handy pickup to pick up those Ferrari points, isn't he?
Yeah, and you can definitely see that there's more to come from him as well. We've seen him grow as a driver and get more aggressive since after Austria.
Yeah,
So
he's certainly been a different driver after that, hasn't he?
yeah, a sexier driver.
Oh yeah, Zach loves a bit of sexy Leclerc.
I do indeed. So yeah, Charles Leclerc, I love him as an option at 21.6. He can definitely help find you a bit more extra money if you're willing to go without a Verstappen or Hamilton in place of Leclerc.
Yeah,
Especially at tracks where Ferrari are going to be better. Why not?
I suppose that as for a mid-season review, early season he was probably a really poor pick. He wasn't really getting many points because the races he was doing well on, he was qualifying high up the grid, but he was losing places. So therefore, you lose -2, don't you, for qualifying in the top 10?
Yeah, each place you lose, yeah.
So that obviously would play a big impact on Leclerc having qualified in pole or on the front row for a couple of races and then finishing below those positions would have, obviously had a negative effect on him.
Did you know he's only finished in the Dream Team once?
Wow, that is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, that is surprising.
That
That was at Bahrain as well, second race of the season.
wow. Wow, that's mad.
It is indeed, but I do expect to see him pop up in the Dream Team at least a couple more times this season.
Maybe the next two races, Spa and Monza, meant to suit the Ferraris.
Yeah, that's not a question at all. I can definitely see that happening.
Can they do a little bit better than what they have been doing recently? So yeah, moving on to the next driver. 2 more to go before we reach that magic number 10. Let's stick to the same order in terms of we put them together in our sandwich. Get the layers right in this kind of review sandwich. We will very tasty, very tasty. Getting distracted. Late night food. Yeah. Bottas. I'd say a really solid fantasy pick. Bottas.
Yeah. Well, speaking of food, he's had his porridge for the first half of the season, hasn't he, Bottas?
He certainly has.
Yeah. I'm not sure you put porridge in a sandwich, but why not? It's worked so far for the most part.
We're all about pushing boundaries here and exploring new ideas on F1 Fanatic, Zach. And if we're going to put porridge in a roll or a sandwich, then why not? Why not do it, Zach?
Surprise your taste buds. Go for it.
Yeah, there we go. A little bit of heavy carbs.
Yeah, so Bottas, 372 points, makes him the third highest point scorer in the fantasy game. 372, fantastic. Best thing about him, his price tag. Once again, same as Charles Leclerc, he's at a lovely price point of, I think, about 20.5, 20.5. Wow, what a bargain. So he's a sweet 10 million exactly cheaper than his teammate Hamilton. Of course, you would expect Hamilton to outrace Bottas, but you don't necessarily expect Hamilton to outqualify Bottas. So, of course, you do get 2 points for beating your teammate on qualifying. And
Well, carry on.
and the head-to-head stats say that they're dead on tied. Hamilton 6, Bottas 6 for qualifying. So you will get some beat the teammate points in qualifying at least. Maybe not so much on a race. Hamilton head-to-head against Bottas
Reigns
is
supreme
9-3.
on that, doesn't he?
Yeah, 9-3. But you can't have it all. As I said, for 20.5 million, that's lovely. What more can you ask for?
Exactly.
Have you got any worries about Valtteri?
No, I think he's a pretty solid pick because yeah, he's so cheap, leaves options for later on. You can go for what I currently have, which is the Bottas Verstappen combo, and you can get Mercedes in there too. So you're basically doing damage limitation on not having Lewis Hamilton within the side, and he is still third, and obviously rather than having just first in the championship, although Lewis is ahead by quite a lot, you could have second and third. So then their combined points are comfortably ahead of Hamilton.
Yep, the logic adds up there. So Bottas is a nice, safe, steady Eddie option. But form suggests that maybe it's time to take some risks. The last 2 races, Bottas has had a DNF in Germany, of course, spinning out, hitting the wall in a mixed weather conditions race. And then last time out, had a collision with Leclerc. Try to say both things at once. Leclerc. But collision with Leclerc. Collision with Leclerc and finished P8. So yeah, last 2 races, DNF and P8. Form suggests maybe he's struggling under the pressure.
Yeah, I think he is, especially with those comments when Toto Wolff came out with them. I think that really hit him hard on that basis. Right. Moving on to Pierre Gasly, and I think he has probably been pound for pound the worst value driver on the market.
From an F1 perspective, yes, but from a fantasy perspective, I disagree. He's not been the worst. He's not been the best. Obviously, I will play devil's advocate. So Carlos Sainz, yes, he's cheaper than Gasly. Yes, he's outscored Gasly. Carlos Sainz is pound for pound the best F1 fantasy driver. Yes, but Gasly's not been the worst. He will be the worst from now on. So everything I'm saying here doesn't really matter. But I've had some good times with Gasly. I've turboed Gasly. If you have turboed Gasly at the right times, then you have had good times with Gasly. It's not all been doom and gloom. He scored 168 points, which puts him 7th overall. And considering that he's 14.2, that means you can turbo him. So when he was finishing 6th, when he was boxing for softs and getting the fastest lap, you could have turboed him for that.
When that was early season, really, when he was doing those, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I believe early season he was more in the 17 mil bracket, wasn't he?
True. Yes.
So therefore, that then made him less appealing.
Yeah.
Of a subject.
And as of recent form, he's not been finishing 6th as such. He did finish 6th last race, but he qualified 6th, so he didn't get any overtakes or move up positions in a race. So not as many points as you'd hope for, because even when he wasn't performing race-wise, he did about enough most weeks for qualifying. So he ended up losing places in the race, and again, that hurts your fantasy points. So that's why he's not been the best. But we don't have to worry about that anymore. But what we can learn from that is Albon. Albon doesn't need to be beating the Ferraris, for example, to achieve good fantasy points, he can just get sixth. If Albon can qualify, if he can make Q3, it doesn't matter where he finishes. Like ideally, he'd make Q3 and start on a grid 10th. But yeah, if he makes Q3 and finishes sixth in the race, Albon will be a great fantasy option to turbo even.
Yeah, no, certainly would be. Poor Pierre, he now definitely is the worst value for money signing that you could make until things can change around and we'll see if he settles into the Toro Rosso job.
Yeah, because even if he does perform at Toro Rosso, you're not going to want to get him on fantasy till you see that price drop, because 14 million is just too much to pay.
Exactly, far too much.
Yeah, I feel bad for Pierre
because he do with the rest of the team.
Yeah, I feel bad for Pierre because even when we're talking about him here in his segment, even then I'm still drifting to Albon. I can't even give him his own little segment on a mid-season review.
Without mentioning Albon, he must hate seeing his face right now. Not in terms of as a bloke, but it's just a reminder, isn't it?
Yeah. Envy.
Right. I think that probably is quite a good halfway point of the 10 drivers to round up on our F1 mid-season. I think we've covered some good fancy points there for you listeners. I'm now going to run through live an idea with Zach, so you'll see how this goes. I'm just checking the clock and conscious that although we love talking about it, we do realise that people do have lives and they might not want to listen all the time. I know, mate. It's overrated. These strange people are trying to go and have a life. No, they don't.
You mean there's more to life than F1 fantasy? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I don't think there is, but I think there's some very strange people in the world who think there is.
Oh, I see.
They need to be enlightened, mate.
Exactly.
So yes, no, we are coming up just to the hour mark. So I was thinking, do we push back the second 10 to next week's F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast? Because otherwise we are probably looking at a 2-hour stint
here. Yep, absolutely. That works for me.
Yeah. So I suppose now we can finish off with a quick fire quiz. And
quick fire quiz. 5 questions.
5 questions.
Yes.
I'm excited because last week, guys, if you tuned in, you will realise that I had a very poor showing the quiz. I was 5 out of 12, emotionally distraught, and I have only just recovered my mental well-being to this stage. So I'm ready, Zach. Throw me 5 questions. I'm getting 5 out of 5. I feel it today.
Oh, I'll accept 4 out of 5, but if you get 3 or worse, you may well get axed from the show. I might have to get in someone from Thailand. Seriously. Okay. Are you ready to play this week's True or False? I'll give you a question like, did Lewis Hamilton win at Hungary? True or false? You say true. But of course, it's not that simple. Instead of true or false, this week we're playing made it out in one piece or unsafe pit release.
Oh, so topical. Phil Leclerc. Bless him.
Yep, indeed. Okay, so simple. If my statement that I give to you is true, you will say made it out in one piece. If it is false, you will say
unsafe pit release.
Exactly. Okay.
I've got the hang of this game.
You have. Let's jump straight into it then. Question number 1. George Russell is the only driver not to have scored a championship point so far this season.
Whoa. That is, oh God, what's the true one again?
Made out in one piece.
made it out in one piece.
Oh, exactly correct. George Russell's made it out in one
Yay!
piece.
That's 1 from 1. I feel that was probably the easiest one.
That was the
of
easiest one.
these
Yep.
four.
Now you're in the deep end.
Oh no!
So let's
But
hope you've
I
got your
brought
swim
my
shorts on.
swimming shorts.
Hey!
Yeah, there we go. Nod to Alex Albon. We're going swimming with Albon. Woohoo!
Right,
Bit weird.
speaking of Albon, this next question involves 2 former Red Bull drivers.
How exciting!
Here's the statement. Gasly has more drivers' championship points than Ricciardo has fantasy points this season.
Oh, that is an absolute corker. I'm going to go with unsafe pit release.
So you're saying false. That was out in one piece. Gasly has 63 drivers' championship points and Ricciardo only has 58 fantasy points.
He doesn't.
He does. We'll talk more about that next week.
Wow.
So tune in.
That
Okay.
is, wow, yeah.
Yep, wrong. So you got pressure's on now because I said you had to get 4. Oof.
Yeah. Now
Okay.
I've stopped.
Ready for the next question.
I'm ready.
Kubica has been in the F1 Fantasy Dream Team more times than Russell has. Is that out in one piece or is that an unsafe pit release?
Unsafe pit release.
You're going to say unsafe pit release. You sound confident and you should be. That's the correct answer. Well done.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 ding.
Woo! Back in the game. That's 2
Back
from
in the
3. I'm basically struggling.
Yep. Okay, next one. Next question is the battle of the McLaren boys. We love them.
We do love them.
Absolutely.
Everyone. What a great team they are.
Definitely. So here's the statement. Lando Norris has more fantasy points than Carlos Sainz has driver championship points. So Lando Norris has more fantasy points than Carlos Sainz has drivers championship points.
I feel like this is here to trip up. So I'm going to go with unsafe pit release.
Oh, you're correct. Well done. Lando Norris with 48 fantasy points, Carlos Sainz with 10 more, 58 drivers championship points. Well done. You did not stumble there. So the last one, pressure on.
That Lando Norris must have his low monetary value for a reason. And I remember you having a conversation that although he looks like he's doing well in races, he hasn't actually translated that into points because he often qualifies high but falls back through the grid.
Exactly, and we'll talk more about that, breaking down his points exactly again on next week's pod. Okay, so the last question then, whether you will host this podcast next week or not, it's for all the money, for all the points, all the prizes. I'll tell you this statement now. This statement is definitely true. Mercedes has got 786 constructors points in the fantasy game. That's Mercedes, 786. That's true.
Wow.
But is this statement true?
Okay.
Mercedes are 200 points ahead of all other constructors on total fantasy points.
Is this 200 exactly?
No, at least 200. At least 200.
Definitely then it is. Oh, I haven't said it in a while. What's the true one again?
Out in one piece or unsafe pit release?
I'm out in one piece.
You are out in one piece and you're back on the pod next week. Well done.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't forget, guys, to comment below how excited you are that I've retained my position. Who's proud of me, guys?
Yeah, we just lost all our viewers for next pod.
Oh, no. It was going so well. Oh, God. We try.
We do try.
Where there's hope. No.
Okay. Just to reel you back in, guys, if you were thinking about not listening to next week's next week's quiz.
Go with a positive, because this is the place to get F1 fantasy news. Of course, you're going to tune into next week.
Of course. And of course, you're going to hear next week's quiz, which I'm very excited to announce, is called Yarno Truly or Juan Carlo False Akella. I love that one. I'm waiting to use that one.
I cannot wait to play already. I mean, at least I won't get these ones wrong.
Yeah, at least you'll remember this time which one it is.
I mean, geez, I just like going. Maybe I kept on saying unsafe pit release because I
You
just didn't remember.
didn't know what the other one was. Yeah.
This sounds right. Oh God, yeah. So guys, usually in part of an F1 Fantasy Weekly thing, we would come up to our race weekend Kimi moment of the week, but sadly, there has been no racing, obviously, other than the Brands Hatch that me and Ashley went to on Sunday, but no Kimi Raikkonen moment. But don't worry, guys, because if you're tuning in and survived this long in the podcast, one, thank you very much for continually listening. We do realise we do waffle on for a very long time, but it's worth sticking through because now you're here for your Kimi moment of the week. And basically, it is a dilemma, and this is an interactive one, guys. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to get you to read out your team, Zach, and we're going, how can you keep Kimi in your side?
Yep, so we'll put it up on the screen for you guys. I need your help. Please comment below any suggestion, any and every suggestion you have, because I need to keep Kimi in my team. But at the same time, there's a Red Bull driver out there at 7.6 million that I would also love to have in my team. So my team is as follows. We've got Verstappen and Bottas, my two premium drivers, followed by Carlos Sainz, who I just have to keep. He's too good. Kimi Raikkonen. How can I remove him? I can't remove Kimi. And then Lando Norris, who's too cheap for me to get rid of. I would just get rid of Lando Norris as much as I love him.
So Lando seems an absolute steal. Everyone thought his points would go up, but no.
Yeah, and now I'm stuck with him because he's so cheap. I've not got any money in the bank.
There's
They're my five drivers.
Yeah.
And I've got Mercedes as constructors. What should I do?
Zach, who knows? Who knows what you should do?
Well, hopefully you guys can help me out. Write down any suggestion.
It's the point, yeah.
Yeah.
Comment below, how can Zach keep Kimi? How can we save Kimi? This is a how do we save Kimi movement? You know, we don't want to lose him from F1 Fantasy, but he might have to go for the great price and prospect of Alexander Albon in the now Red Bull seat.
Hashtag keeping Kimi.
Hashtag save Kimi.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, I suppose that is there anything left else you want to round off? We covered those 10 drivers quite nicely, I thought. Comment below, guys, what you thought. Did you like F1 fantasy notes that we gave to them? Was there anything we missed that you feel we should have mentioned in the F1 fantasy? I don't know, maybe next week at the end of the 10 drivers, we list through the top constructors.
Yep, we can do.
Maybe we can maybe try that.
Mm-hmm.
Drivers, we could maybe rattle through. And let us know if that's something that you guys would be interested in. But yeah, Zach, anything else to add?
No, other than tune in next week where we'll do that. We'll run through a bit more of the dream teams. We'll hopefully I'll have some kind of idea of what to do, how to keep Kimi and still bring Albon in, and we can discuss that. So see you next week.
Yeah, guys, see you next week. So that mean, guys, if you like what we do, if you're a big fan of the F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast, don't forget to let us know and give us a big thumbs up on there. Like we said, comment below on all those topics we said. Can we hashtag save Kimi? Did we miss any F1 Fantasy points? What is your kind of total to date? Have you had one of these drivers who've strongly affected your team in a positive way? And lastly, guys, subscribe to the channel. This is your place for kind of we update on F1 news. Obviously, we follow all race weekends. We have, like you're listening to here, the F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast every week. So lots of F1 content for you guys to get your teeth stuck into, and there's a little bit for everything, I think, across our channel. Would you agree, Zach?
Yeah, definitely. There's porridge, there's sandwiches, there's a lot.
There's even porridge sandwiches.
Exactly.
So yeah, guys, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification so you can be notified when all our latest video comes out. And yeah, well, are we gonna try, as our usual failing of trying to get our keep racing in at the end?
We're always going to try, and one day it will be a smooth.
It'll be perfect. All right.
Yeah.
So remember, F1 fans, should we do the counting again?
Let's go for no countdown, see what happens. Okay.
All right. Okay. Remember, F1 fans,
keep racing.
Oh, I think that was the best one.
Might be.
Anyway, see you later, guys.
Bye.